Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Welcome in.
Throat's clear today, Jay?
Yeah, no, I'm doing well.
All right.
Forgot about that. Only one man can. Just music is in his veins.
It's like a coughing scat.
Ooh, that's a good idea for the Spitballers, Mike.
yeah,
Thank
there you go. All right.
Thursday, May 8th, the Fantasy Footballers.
Are you just going to cough?
You know it. You just gave me permission.
Welcome into today's podcast. Mike Wright, the Fantasy Hitman, is here. Jason Moore, present and accounted for. I'm Andy Holloway. Got a Deucer's Alley full of Deucers. Producers.
Yep.
And we have a good show for you today. We have overreactions for 2025. We're going to talk about, I think, basically two each. We'll talk about some overreactions we think might happen. We do have news. We got big news.
Yes, we do.
Big news to talk about, and you can.
You are forgiven.
Yeah. I think there's more people going to be on my side now.
I think you're right, and we would be talking about George Pickens, and we'll get into the big trade. Mike had just talked about him erroneously on the last show.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody agreed with him.
You sound so foolish now if you listen to that episode.
Yeah, but he knew what was coming.
Yeah.
He's a very wise
Yeah,
man.
I talked exactly about how I think the trade is not going to happen anymore.
You did. But so we got a lot to go with on today's show. A reminder, you can watch the show, youtube.com/thefantasyfootballers. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure if you are just getting back into fantasy, catching up on everything, you click that follow button on Spotify or Apple so that the latest episodes show up in your pocket. That'd be cool. And that'll get you tuned in for everything that you need. A reminder, we are 2 shows a week through the rest of May and June. And then we move to 3 shows in July and 5 shows a week, August through December.
Oh, yes.
And if you want an extra show every week, all year long, the Footcast comes out every Thursday. It is for supporters of the podcast over at jointhefoot.com, so you can check that out. Here's the quick question for the both of you. Comes from Instagram. Alex writes in, should more leagues abandon the kicker position, or is that in and of itself an overreaction?
Interesting. None of my leagues can ban a kicker because I would never have one in it.
Oh, okay.
I am unable to react or overreact to this. Mike, what say you?
I am on the side of I prefer not to have kickers. I understand why there are players out there who want them in your fantasy football. They want, you're like, hey, we need all the positions. I like that randomness. I don't. Like I think that kickers can on any given week, a random kicker can score way too many points, and yes, there's of course strategy. You can get an edge, like if you follow the right schedule, the right statistics to point you in the path of this is going to be a better kicker. But the thing is, we just don't care. We don't.
That is the issue.
It's the last. You spend your entire draft season just obsessed scouring. Who are those late sleepers that I'm going to get in the final 3 rounds? You're like, and then I'm going to get a kicker, which I hope he's on a high-powered offense.
Go ahead, Jason.
If you compare that to a similar position in defenses, where it's like we don't look super deep into defenses during the draft season. You're drafting them near the end of your draft. Okay, they are fun. Kickers are not fun to play. No one is like, oh, man, this is the best. Making sure I draft this guy, and I'm going to play the waiver wire action. Like, that just doesn't actually happen in reality in most of your leagues.
I think that for me, that there are kickers that are it's very predictable that they're going to have a good season.
Yes.
Justin Tucker for many years, right? Good offenses, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's edges to be had.
To finish the thought, the difference to me is that on the high end, yes, you can be predictive about kickers. They always get drafted last in your draft, but it's also rare for, like, there's a level of randomness where the worst kickers in the league can have the biggest week, right? The rank 28, 29, 30, at any moment, they could have the biggest week, right? It's a little bit more random in the way that plays out. That differentiates it from other positions where that doesn't happen as often. And there are other offensive positions we don't draft. We don't draft the dedicated fullback, right? We love Kyle Juszczyk, right? We'd love to, he fits into the running back spot because it's part of the bigger picture of watching football and what you enjoy about the game. When a drive ends and a kick has to happen, you're sad a drive is over. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
You're
it's
sad.
A negative thing.
It's a negative thing. So I think, there are a lot of arguments. If people like it, whatever, you can do things to minimize the negative impact of kickers on your league, which could be like, don't overly reward long kicks, make them all worth just 3 no matter where they're at, or don't take off a bunch of points on a missed kick or something. Any of that stupid stuff. I like defenses. I like having them in there.
The difference
they possess some of the same qualities, though.
They possess some of the same qualities, but it is fun, and you can target them, and you can target the other offenses, and the waiver wire is an exciting part of defenses because you can play a bad defense in a good matchup. And so there are defenses that are just always out there because they've got a bad schedule, so no one's going to play them for a couple weeks. So you're playing that game against your league mates. Who's going to grab him a week ahead of time for the great matchup in week 15 or whatever it is? There's strategy and fun there that just never comes into question with kickers. Kickers, you draft them at the beginning of the year in the order you think, and you go, I hope I did it right. And then eventually if one gets injured, you're like, okay, I'm going to swap them out. And that's just boring.
Well, and how often are kickers a part of a trade? That should tell you everything. They're not parts of trades in fantasy almost ever. So if they're not parts of trades, they're not being, you're not like.
It's not part of your trade. It's almost always the final pick of your draft.
And if you cut them, this is a more important thing. If you cut them out of your league, you can add a flex position.
Yeah,
you can
fun.
Add more, enjoyment to your league. So that's the side we lean on. I'm not been out of shape.
That's the side I stand on.
Yeah, Jason stands on it. I lean on it. Mike.
I would say I lean on it too because if that's fun for you in the league, okay, go ahead.
That's why we play.
But I think it is not just not fun. I think it creates frustration.
Well, it certainly did for Mike long ago.
Yeah, he's got burns.
Yeah.
He has a playoff defeat.
When you lose in the semi-championship. Fairbairn. When Fairbairn
more like unfair
makes 5 field goals and I think some extra points, you're just like, what is this? Your kicker outscored your RB1. Like
and that was the last straw.
Yeah, this is not ever happening again.
All right, let's talk about that big news.
News and notes from around the league.
Well, it happened.
Yeah.
George Pickens is no longer a Pittsburgh Steeler, been traded to the Cowboys. They get Pickens and a 2027 6th-round pick. They give up a 3rd and a 2027 5th-round pick. And so, it's kind of like trading them for a soft second situation. Right?
Sure.
You move up around later, and you get a 3rd, and George Pickens is not going to be the running mate with DK Metcalf. So there's two sides of the discussion, right? There's the, clearly DK Metcalf will be everything in the passing offense in Pittsburgh, which is good. I mean,
this trade is incredible. Like this
for
trade,
both sides.
This trade
for fantasy.
Yeah, that's what I mean. For fantasy purposes, this helps pretty like everybody who's involved, except
other than Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper is like, crap. I thought I was going to be a Cowboy.
Other than whoever Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback ends up being. But like George Pickens and DK Metcalf are two similar archetype of wide receivers. It felt like as we were going in, you can't be overly confident with either of them. You're going to lean to DK because they traded a bunch for him and they just gave him the money. So he's the number 1. But what does the number 1 mean when you have George Pickens doing really similar stuff to you on a low passing volume offense? Well, now we're talking George Pickens goes to Dallas. He's matched up with Dak, which is like, this is perfection. This was a tweet from Warren Sharp. Dak Prescott the last 2 years. Number 1 in most passing yards on 15-yard go routes. Number 2, most attempts of 15-yard go routes. George Pickens the last 2 years, the most receiving yards on 15-yard go routes and the second most catches on those types of plays too. So this is exactly what the Cowboys need.
And it's not bad for CeeDee Lamb.
No, it is even better for CeeDee. CeeDee can move around. He can keep being underneath in the slot and being a yards after catch guy where defenses, it's not Brandon Cooks or Jalen Tolbert on the outside. It's George Pickens you actually have to worry about.
Yeah, you're going to have to make sure you're paying attention to the other half of the field and not just taking your entire defense and saying, let's slow CeeDee down. Now, the CeeDee down.
There it is. There it is. Yep.
The target market share probably comes down a few percentages. I had him originally at 31% market share. Maybe that comes down to 29, 28, but CeeDee is still going to be a target hog. But now the defenses aren't going to be as difficult. So I agree. I mean, this is really across the board. It's a wonderful thing for offenses, for fantasy.
Yeah, it's great for Dak.
It's huge.
It's huge for Dak. He needed another target. They didn't get it in the draft. Do you like, just right out of the gate, someone like Darnell Mooney, someone like George Pickens in Dallas? Are you on the Pickens side of that equation?
I'll go Pickens, yeah.
Just for the upside potential?
Yeah, for the upside, Pickens is, if you go watch George Pickens highlights. And I know you can't judge a player completely on their highlights, but it's like he does things on go routes that very few wide receivers in the NFL can do. You got something, Jay?
Well, I just wonder, because I know you are in tune with this as well. Do you have any concerns about the fact that whenever a Steeler wide receiver is traded, they go and die?
There definitely is that of the Mike
Tomlin knows what his up.
The Mike Tomlin era has been, or just the Steelers in general, they've been very good at calling their shot when a wide receiver leaves. Because it's like Claypool, they absolutely fleeced the Bears there.
Antonio Brown.
Yeah, we got rid of Antonio Brown at the
Deontay
right
Johnson.
Point. Yes, Deontay. But the thing about is like
George Pickens.
People are like, well, you got also Mike Wallace, and you got to remember the context was the Steelers wanted Mike Wallace. And then Mike Wallace.
Yeah, Wallace was okay.
But I'm saying Mike Wallace didn't want that contract. So that contract ended up going to Antonio Brown, which turned into a huge hit. And then you have Santonio Holmes.
There aren't Steelers fans that like this move right now.
And Manny Sanders
the truth.
For Denver had a couple great years.
Yeah, the Steelers fans hate this move.
Oh, for sure.
I do think that they got the wrong end of it. Absolutely. Now, Pickens doesn't have a contract.
Yeah.
And it didn't come with a contract extension in Dallas, and there's some more prove-it aspects there. But Aaron Rodgers coming in, potentially, the wide receiver options outside of DK Metcalf are abysmal. We have an entirely unproven, we hope Roman Wilson's around in year 2. It's not often you miss or irrelevant in year 1, and it's big time in year 2.
It is, but Jason loves Roman Wilson was a third-round pick.
I liked Roman Wilson coming out of college, but let's get on the field. I mean, you couldn't do it, and having productive options outside of one receiver in Pittsburgh hasn't happened recently either. Calvin Austin I would put my money on Calvin Austin having a better fantasy season than Roman Wilson. As much as I hope and liked Roman Wilson in college, that's just where I'd place my bet right now.
It is usually a bad sign for a rookie to be so even like. He was injured. Roman Wilson missed his rookie season for all intents and purposes. I think he only got on the field in one game and then was not active outside of that. So to me, that at least gives potential that we just didn't get to see. It's not like he was on the field and failed. That is like a pretty assured hit rate of
Wasn't
future
there
failure.
Some of that in camp, though?
Yeah, he got injured in camp. He got injured several times.
Right. Yeah, he had a brief moment in time where he was around. Robert Woods signed there. Don't forget about that. That's so boring.
Bye-bye trees.
But he could get work. Scotty Miller's there. And they could add. They could be a team that goes and adds a free agent, Keenan Allen or something. Like if Keenan Allen.
Yeah, Amari Cooper's like, okay, Cowboys, huh?
Yeah, I mean, if Keenan or Amari Cooper landed, it would be – none of us would feel like they got a lot worse losing Pickens in that situation. But there you go. And on the other side, it's great for Dak.
Yeah.
CeeDee, maybe some of the deep shots don't go his way, but
it's still it makes your offense overall better, and you don't need to. CeeDee Lamb is a true number 1. I'm not concerned about him in the slightest. It's like I said, I love this fantasy purposes for so many guys. It really there was a clog, and the plumber showed up and fixed that for us.
Work,
and it was fantastic work. And then on top of that, like for the Cowboys, this bet of, which is essentially a third, if they get to the end of the year and they go, we can't make the money work, and we can't pay Lamb, Dak, and also pay George Pickens, which not saying they can't, but even if they don't, now George Pickens is going to go out and he's going to get a bag of money from someone, and now you have that compensatory pick.
Spoken like a true dynasty manager of George Pickens.
Well,
living a good life.
I'm trying to give the Cowboys credit for actually doing something really, really well.
Jags did not do something well. They paid $39 million to Gabe Davis, three-year deal, and now they have released him. He played 10 games last year. He's still just 26. I like to say he sucks.
Yeah.
Because I think he sucks.
You know where he should go? The Bills. I mean,
he could.
Just give him another touchdown option. He worked out there.
He's just done.
You guys,
he's just done.
But he tore his meniscus in week 11, so that's part of it. And then obviously with them drafting their new rookie wide receiver / cornerback and having Brian Thomas Jr.
I guess that's the good encouragement that Travis Hunter is going to be a full-time offensive player.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't cut Gabe Davis right there after you lose Ingram and Kirk.
I had done the Jaguars team and statted them out with Gabe Davis on it prior to this release, and it didn't change much for me, I'll say that.
No.
So Gabe Davis, it was a 3-year 39. This was 24 fully guaranteed. His dead money this year, guys, will be $20 million. Do you know how many receptions that Gabe Davis had last year?
Oh, man. I don't.
I'm going to guess 40 or less.
Yeah, I'm going to go 16.
I'm going to tell you he had one reception for every $1 million of dead money that they owe.
20.
He had 20 receptions.
Bum.
24 mil.
He's a bum.
Hey. But shout out to you, Gabe Davis, getting that money.
Dallas Goedert agreed to a restructured deal for 2025 to stay in Philly.
Goodness, that was a really weird, long posturing.
Yep, he's going to hang around for another year.
And it was like this big old fight in Philly where reporters were like, is there any chance he actually plays next year? And well, I'm not sure. And it's like they just restructured to take a couple million away from him. It's weird.
Yeah. Yeah, well, he was trying to position for a better situation, I guess. All right, I think that's it by way of news. Unless you guys have anything else, we can take a break and jump into our overreactions. Sound good?
Let's go.
I guess one thing I didn't mention that we could, just to make you roll your eyes, if they weren't rolled into the back of their head because you were proud of the Cowboys, we do have the running back situation there where Ryan Schottenheimer was non-committal on whether there would be a lead back or a committee approach among Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, Deuce Vaughn, Jaden Blue,
Sounds
yada
right.
yada.
I didn't hear a lead back.
I was going to say you can't. That's not a decision.
I have an incredible idea, Dallas. 0 running backs on the field.
Ooh, go 6 wide.
Yeah. And throw everything to CeeDee Lamb.
If you read their depth chart at running back over and over again, you will continue to add pass attempts to their stat line, Jason, inside of your Google Doc.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's jump in.
I'm not going to do what you all think I'm going to do, which is just flip out.
Overreactions for 2025. What are we expecting fantasy players to overreact to? Why should they be careful? Who wants to kick it off? Any volunteers?
I will go ahead and kick it off here because I don't know if you've seen this one yet, Jason.
I have. Oh, I did. Go ahead.
I haven't seen any of your guys.
Okay, this is about not overreacting, and I am saying
you're really talking to me.
I am. I'm talking to you, and I'm talking to the world. Don't bury Breece Hall. He's not dead yet.
Oh, I'm actually in on that.
Please tell me more.
That's why I tried to trade for him in Dynasty.
Oh, you're trying to get him?
I tried to offer him a couple offers.
It has been a murky off season at best here for Jason and his relationship with one of his favorite running backs in recent memory of Breece Hall. Last year was disappointing. He finished at the running back 17. This was a guy you drafted hoping I might have the RB1 here. and he gave you 13.3 points per game, and it felt bad because that's not anywhere – like when you're going for that elite ceiling of a season, when you finish at running back 17, it's disappointing. But here are some numbers of don't bury him yet. He had the 5th highest offensive snap percentage among running backs. Like even with they started working other guys in, he was still on the field a ton. He ranks 4th in yards after contact per attempt since entering the league. So counting all of his 3 years. And on top of that, he's still a great pass catcher. And if you want someone who can actually get into that top 5, you really need to have pass catching. And we have over the last decade, the only running backs through their first 3 years who have averaged 5 or more targets and 13 rushing attempts per game, which that is a ton of work. Those names of the guys in their first 3 years who hit that mark: Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, and Breece Hall. This is a really good list to be a part of.
I think he's such an interesting situation because I'm with you on the overreaction. I think the burns are major. Jason has accentuated them. He has not put any there's no burn cream. There's no treatment.
He's not fighting fires. He's
I
showing
actually
them off.
took my extinguisher off the wall, threw it over the neighbor's fence. It's like, I'm going to let this thing burn.
Yeah, he's letting it sizzle. But the only thing about Breece Hall that changes this year for me is that the potential outcomes for him have changed. You're at a point now where we're 2 coaches removed from his draft coach.
Yes.
We have talent in the backfield beyond Breece Hall, and you're going to get towards the end of contractual situations. So I don't look at him like his risk rating is higher for me.
That's fine.
His projection's lower than it would have been in the past, but the possibility that he still has upside is it's 100% there. Like if you end this year and he's the running back 11, the running back 9, running back 13, like not surprised.
Right.
I think that's
But I'm saying,
that's very
to not
possible.
bury him. And to speak to those points, Andy, you have, at least metrics-wise, look, Braylon Allen, who I really liked as a prospect when he came in, and when he first started getting some work, it looked like this is a dude who really could challenge Breece Hall for some of these attempts. But metrics-wise, only Gus Edwards logged a worse explosive rush rate than Braylon Allen. He was 43rd in forced missed tackle rate. He was 50th in yards per carry. Like the actual production wasn't as good by the end as we thought it would. And then looking at the offense was so bad with Rodgers and with Nathaniel Hackett. Looking in Justin Fields is now their quarterback. Look at him last year. Rodgers had a lower completion rate than Justin Fields. He had a lower yards per attempt, a lower ADOT, and a higher off-target rate. We're talking about Rodgers versus Fields was a better thrower of the ball last year. And while it is a truth for the most of the time in fantasy football that when you have a mobile quarterback, it can be worse for the running back because you see fewer targets. But Justin Fields, last year, a 15% check down rate. Like that is only Andy Dalton had a higher check down rate among qualified quarterbacks. Fields was actually thrown to his running back. So if we're not going to lose the targets,
you buried the lead. I feel like that's the best thing. The best thing you said
I had
was
to
that.
get there.
Now let me ask you. You say don't bury him. Okay, is this a back that can be a top 5 running back in fantasy? Because right now he's being drafted at 10.
I would say I would not project that at all. But when you're making the ceiling case for guys in that range who have the actual physical ability, because a running back needs certain things to break right on his team that are out of his control. And if some of those things break right, Breece Hall, I think, is still good enough to be 5. But I would be pretty surprised if he's not a top 12 running back at the end of this year.
Well, I hope you are right.
Yeah, that's that'll be a tough one for fantasy players where they pull the trigger. But right now, ADP wise, underdog, sleeper, they don't seem too afraid. It seems like when you get beyond the big names and you want to lock in somebody that looks like they're going to get all the work, they're choosing Breece Hall in the same. Is he and Mixon and Jacobs, like, where are those guys going relative to Breece Hall right now? Where's Mixon?
I would have to go look. I can tell you. 1 sec.
Yeah, I'd be curious where Mixon is going relative to Breece, because I would project the Houston Texans to be a better team, and we like that at running back.
Mixon on sleeper is going at 18 versus running back
James
10.
Conner or Breece Hall. I'm sure Connor's going behind him,
Connor's
too.
going behind Mixon.
Jacobs is probably going just ahead of him. But
Yeah, a couple spots.
But, I mean, you're in a category of, like, if they get all the work, that's checking a lot of boxes for fantasy players. All right, my overreaction, no one's going to like this because we're still in the offseason, right? The season hasn't started?
That is correct.
And who wins every offseason? What team? What team is the champion of the offseason?
The Dolphins often are winners of the offseason.
No, this team has won it like 3 years in a row. This Chicago Bears.
The Bears, yeah. The
Bears are Super Bowl champions of the offseason 3 straight years. They got the rings. Here's my overreaction. Don't overreact to Ben Johnson and him becoming the head coach of this team and that it will somehow guarantee a bunch of fantasy relevant players in Chicago.
Oh, the people don't like it.
Do not like that.
The people are upset, Andy.
That's all.
The Bears fans.
The people in Chicago are rioting.
I am rooting for him to succeed. I like Caleb Williams. I hope he succeeds and is a fantasy relevant quarterback, but he might not be. I like Rome Odunze. I hope he has a breakout campaign. He might not be. There are a lot of players on this team that people want to be fantasy relevant, including a rookie tight end drafted at number 10. But we always look at the coaching transition during the offseason with rose-colored glasses, all the positives. Why do you get hired as a head coach?
Because you did something good last year.
Yeah, I mean, you are coming off of a successful season in whatever capacity, like Canales, right? I think he's a great coach. It wasn't all roses last year in Carolina. Quite the opposite. And Ben Johnson's got a lot to work on. We think he's making all these great moves. That's what the Bears do every offseason. Over the last decade, first-year head coaches, just to get it out of the way, it's a .426 winning percentage. So you're a first-time head coach. You're already behind the 8 ball on the averages there. This is the 5th head coach the Bears have had since we started this podcast.
Wow.
That's, Tressman and Fox and Nagy and Eberflus. The last 2, they provided a lot of good content for the podcast, but not good football for the Bears fans. You cannot always wave a magic wand in 1 year. It's very difficult. And last year, this wasn't like a moderately okay offensive team giving you fantasy production. This was still had Caleb Williams, right? You still had the main cook in the kitchen, and you were the 32nd ranked in yards per game as a rookie, 28th in points per game, dead last in expected points added on first down. This team was bad. And so do I think they'll be better? Yes. But there is a lot to worry about and a lot of mouths to feed. You have, we've gone through our projections. I've looked at the Bears. It's like you're throwing the ball to Loveland and DJ Moore and Burden and Odunze, and Kmet's still going to be in the mix a little bit. And you've got Swift out of the backfield. And there's just a lot of players where I don't think it's going to be easy for us on a week-to-week basis to sift through who's going to produce if this team is a middle-of-the-pack offense. I think everybody wants to project Ben Johnson making them a top 10 offense. But the more realistic outcome is that they'll be middle of the pack, and that's a huge improvement for this team. So, to me, the overreaction is just the optimism. I think we've been here before. We've awarded them the offseason, but we need to temper expectations, and it was kind of something we had to try to do last year. Last year, there was tons of excitement around the wide receiver room.
Well, last year, I mean, what they have 3 top 36 ADP wide receivers?
Exactly.
And it was...
Yeah, and DJ Moore...
This is not possible.
I mean, DJ Moore finished at wide receiver 17 last year, and he had been coming off a wide receiver 6 season before the trade. I do worry a little bit about Odunze and Moore, ping-ponging back and forth as being the most relevant receiver on certain weeks with how it goes. So, I just think that that's the overreaction of the offseason. That doesn't mean it can't be your optimism for the offseason. I'm fine with that. I'm optimistic too. But the numbers say that this doesn't happen in one offseason in a division where it's brutal. That's a tough division. Green Bay, Detroit, Minnesota. 6 games against those teams. They know who you are, and they know Ben Johnson too.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where I think we need to temper our expectations.
You heard it here. from Andy Holloway. Bears suck.
I know a couple friends that's what they will have heard.
Yeah, for sure. If you're a Bears fan, that's the only. Despite you saying you're rooting for them, everything, all they heard is that they suck.
I didn't hear any of that.
It is worth noting that usually, like the true bell of the ball, biggest landing spot. Which if I think what was that for this offseason, it was this higher. I mean, we waited 2 coaching cycles to get this man a new job because we believe in him. And when you have that kind of hype, I mean, sometimes, the generational talent is Andrew Luck, and sometimes it's Trevor Lawrence or worse. So it's worth noting, like, let's not overreact, because people were already overreacting last year to the Bears. I like that argument. Okay, so my thing to not overreact to, and this comes from the fact that right now we are statting out players. We're going through their projections. We are making their lines for next year, and I'm seeing it over and over and over with the best of the best, the guys who were awesome last year. Don't overreact to players who had an abnormally high touchdown percentage in 2024. It's so hard. Like, the recency bias makes it so hard to look at guys who were awesome. Baker Mayfield, Laser Mayfield. There we go. Laser Mayfield.
So clean.
Lamar Jackson was unbelievable. So Patrick Mahomes is like the poster boy. It used to be Aaron Rodgers for this. I feel like that's almost too dated now. Now he's an old man. We don't remember how incredible he was for fantasy. But everyone remembers how great Patrick Mahomes was. Throwing 8.6% of his passes for touchdowns. And then the next year was down to 5.4. And it's like, oh, whoa. Oh, and then it's back up to 6.5 and then down to 5. Touchdowns are not a sticky stat. We say it all the time, but sometimes, I mean, there are a few players, and literally you can count them on one hand, where you go, I know that player is a double-digit touchdown machine. But what we really think is we think of like a quarter of the league that way. Oh, he's a big body guy who's had touchdowns in the past, so he has them. So I've got a handful of players that I just want to bring up exactly what they did and how that compares to normal. First up, Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, the 3 years prior to this last year, was awesome. But he threw 4.2% touchdowns, 5.2% touchdowns, 5.3% touchdowns, all in his normal range. And then last year, 8.6. He went from 16 touchdowns, 17 touchdowns, 24 to 41 touchdowns. That's not going to repeat. It never repeats. Like these kind of players, Baker Mayfield, same exact thing. He was awesome. And we're like, well, he's got all the tools there. They added a great rookie wide receiver. He's going to be even better this year. The truth is, yeah, this is a guy whose touchdown rate has been nowhere near, 4.1, 3, 4.9. And then this last year,
like a league average guy.
Yeah, league average guy, not bad. 7.2. So it's really hard to be like, well, it's going to fall back down to his norm. Statistically speaking, it usually does. Same thing with Jared Goff. He was up at a very nice 6.9% touchdown
He was
percentage,
outrageous last year.
and that is not his norm. So you got to watch out for those guys. A couple other players at other positions, James Cook. My goodness. Last year we were going in saying he can't score touchdowns. Then he tied the franchise record for rushing touchdowns. 43% of his fantasy points came via touchdown. Over the last 6 years, every single player who's ever done that has had massive regression the next year. Terry McLaurin, he's one of only 10 wide receivers since 2000 with 13 plus rushing. Oh, my Lord.
They were plush.
They were, yeah.
Need a break?
13.
Get you a towel?
13 receiving touch. Time out. I call time. Yeah. All right. We got to take a
quick commercial break.
Elevator music.
What do you want to talk about? I'm calling time. This is my first of 4.
You're not fogging your glasses, though?
No, I don't think I fog as much when I'm not fat. Turns out you get really overheated when you're really
overweight. Are you just begging Lefko for another chance?
Oh, I got to go back. Adam, where are you? Invite me back. I'll sit in that hot room and I won't.
Here.
I won't sweat too much.
It's me.
All right. Time
Adam.
in. Back to Terry. Scary Terry was awesome last year. The argument is, well, he got a quarterback. And so now someone could get him the ball. He had 13 receiving touchdowns on fewer than 125 targets. That has happened 10 times before. 9 of those 10 wide receivers decreased their receiving touchdowns next year by the average for all of them, 5.5 fewer touchdowns. That is That's more than he usually gets in a season.
Let's make it positive then, because I feel like a lot of our overreactions are going to be like, don't fall for the trap of the great season. My next one is that exactly, but the positive twist there is let someone else overreact to it. Maybe take advantage in a dynasty or keeper league of unreasonable expectations for certain players.
Take advantage of the overreaction. Mark Andrews this year had 11. He had his career high in receiving touchdowns.
Most people are wise to
that one
mark.
You're not going to capitalize on it, but maybe you can get some.
But like for Terry, right? Just for a quick thought exercise, he was at basically 1,100 yards and 13.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you give him 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns. That is nowhere near the points per game that he put up last year. I mean, he's much closer to his normal output of being like an 11-point wide receiver.
I feel like I'm gonna break our order here.
Okay.
Actually, I'll go to break and then we'll come back and I'm gonna follow what you said, Jason, because it ties into it. My second overreaction, it deals with a very specific player.
Sweet.
And so we'll go to that, and then Mike, you'll take over from there.
Roger.
And here we go. So, look, Jason, you talked about not overreacting to touchdown percentages at quarterback, which are, you do get outlier seasons. You get seasons that let you know what a player's capable of. I think that's what excites people is you now know that Baker's capable of 40-plus touchdowns, right?
Yeah, he can do it. It's a fact.
And Jared Goff, like he could have a big week, right? Like, and that's helpful. Even if you don't draft that player to do it again the whole season, I now know that Baker could do it in a game. He could do it in a series of games. Goff can give you a streaming quarterback performance of 5 touchdowns. That's nice. So my second overreaction is going to be an attempt to make the same mistake twice. I hope I don't make it twice, but it's related to Saquon Barkley, and it's simply that we can't overreact to his dominance and believe that this is a repeatable thing, what he did last year. It was a magical, incredible season for Saquon Barkley, but I want to walk through really what happened and what odds you're going to be stacking up against yourself to expect Saquon Barkley to go out there and do what he did last year. He carried the ball. He touched the ball 482 times. That was 378 touches, 378 in the regular season, another 104 in the playoffs, which was the 5th most touches all time in any playoffs. And you have to look at the numbers when a player gets that much work. It's not like Saquon's never been hurt in his career. But if you look at since 2020, you had 10 running backs that have seen 330-plus touches. Mind you, he hit 378. All those running backs in the last 5 years have seen a decrease of 45-plus touches the following year, and only 2 of those 10 played a full season. So it takes its toll on you. It's very difficult. The other things that were outliers in Saquon's season, and he's an amazing player. He will be an amazing player this year, much like how Derrick Henry will have a good season. He had 7 40-plus yard runs last year. That is more than Todd Gurley had in his career.
What?
Yeah. 7
wow
40-plus yard runs, 4 60-plus yard runs. CMC's, that's how many he has in his entire career. So this was just a magical, perfect season. But breakaway runs, especially breakaway touchdown runs, those are not sticky year to year, much like that touchdown percentage. You're talking about he had a magical season, but it's very, very difficult to repeat as the RB1. And look, Mike, in our league of record, you got the number 1 pick.
Yep.
You get to decide between Saquon Barkley, who's sitting out there, and Bijan, a couple players that drop back into the
Yep, they're looking good.
Into the lottery, out from the lottery. But this is just a matter of not overreacting to expectations for Saquon Barkley. He is entering his age 29 season. Over the last decade, there have been 0 age 29 running backs who have finished in the top 5 among fantasy running backs. It's very, very difficult to get that amount of work and do the exact same thing the next year. And it's difficult, even like the Eagles, they bounced back from a few years ago when they made their Super Bowl run, right? We were there. They lost to the Chiefs. They had some bumps in the road between that time. It's hard when you've got the target on your back as a team like that to be We didn't get a tush-push ban this year. It's still going to be a lot of Jalen Hurts. So, look, I'd love Saquon. He's a top 5 pick. He absolutely should be there. But I think our expectations need to be – we just need to understand how much work he got last year.
There is the answer of a player like if you're in Dynasty and you've got Saquon Barkley and he's the number 1 running back, you should, in most leagues, be able to find someone who will pay a haul, an absolute haul, because they think they're getting the number 1 running back this next year, and they might be, but he's older. I would take advantage of that.
In Dynasty, are you ready to this is super cash in?
This is super cash in. He is
he's going to be 29.
Quintessential type of player where he's at an age and a value where you almost have to make that move. You've got to trade him for a haul.
It's so brutal. And
unless you're trying to run it back.
If you're last year's champ, which you had Saquon, so maybe you were, then sure.
All right, Mike.
I'm saying any of your contender, he's 29, right?
Yeah. He's 28.
And
he'll be 29.
And watching Derrick Henry, who did it at 31. So
this will be a great
tough
season, but this might not be a win your league automatically season. That's what you got out of him. And every running back goes through this. And so it's just one of those situations where, look, what did I say? 2 of the 10 running backs with 330-plus touches even finished a full season? That is very difficult to do. Now, the team might not have a choice but to run them into the ground, but you do have injury risk when you get 400-plus touches on the course of a year in a long playoff run.
All right. I'm going to go through this is some numbers from a study that I recently did over the offseason that kind of flipped a lot of I don't even know what to
tables.
No,
pancakes.
Not tables. Ooh, yeah, it might have been pancakes.
Scripts.
A lot of the things that I thought and that I think are general agreed upon things in fantasy football, it has assumptions. Thank you, Kyle. It is kind of made me have to
rearranging your brain a little bit.
A little bit, because the when we think about wide receivers, right? You think about the year 3 breakout, or if a player has been good before that, the year 3, we're going to hit the ceiling. Like, this is the year where everything really comes together. And I went back and looked at all players drafted since 2014, talking about wide receivers, and it turns out guys who break out in year 2, and I consider a breakout is they finished in the top 24 for the first time. Okay? So they finished
in year 2.
In season 2, and we are really bad then at over projecting those players, and
as in they're going to continue to ascend.
Yes, of the breakout happened next year. They're going to get better, and I am talking in terms of your average draft position for these players. They go higher than, of course, they're going to go really high because you're excited about this guy, but they end up not meeting the expectation. So the way I'm breaking this down is in ADP. You can average out each wide receiver position should score about this amount of points. And what I mean by that is, like, I draft player X as the wide receiver 14. I expect on average the wide receiver 14 at the end of the year is going to have, whatever it is, 10 points. I don't have those points in front of me, but
per game.
But per game. Just so slotting points per game based off of where they were drafted. You're like, I'm expecting this point return by spending this draft capital on that player. So since 2014, 19 total wide receivers finished in the top 24 in their second season. 19 of them.
For their first time.
Yes.
Those players that you would say this is breakout.
Yes. The next year, based off of ADP expectations, 9 of those players drafted did not meet their expectation. Almost half of those players didn't come back and give you the points that you needed, and 8 of those were considered by me to be big misses. These guys were at 2 or more points under what I'm expecting them to give my team. It was a drastically bad pick for me. And here's the names, because these are not bad players. This is Chris Olave, Michael Pittman, Darnell Mooney, DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin, Cortland Sutton, Allen Robinson. Like, these are players that we would all agree that the majority of this, you're like, no, these are good players. But we just juice them up too much if they break out in year 2.
It sounds like as fantasy players, what we do is that addiction to potential.
Yeah.
We don't want what has been. We want what could be.
Exactly.
And so as a consensus, we may drive up their ADP.
Yes, and that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm not saying that their season in totality be a disaster, but I'm saying we are juicing them up just too much. And so 9 guys missed, 9 of the 19, so 10 hit. But of those 10, 2 would be considered big hits who performed 2 points higher.
That was my biggest
expectation.
That was my biggest question is the 10 that did.
How many of them are hitting the ceiling?
Really good.
2 of them. So it was, this is turning things upside down for me of trying to be at least a little more hesitant and skeptical. Obviously, if 10 out of 19 returned value, that's not bad. Like, that's not catastrophic, but it should at least make you think about things. This year's candidates, Jackson Smith and Jigba and Zay Flowers.
Yeah, JSN's like a wide receiver 15 right now.
JSN is super juiced up, and look, the second half was absolutely incredible for JSN.
Would you consider Jamison Williams in that group?
No, he broke out in year 3.
Oh, that's right. He didn't. Last year was year 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
So but JSN, it's a new offensive coordinator. They're coming in like, we're gonna run. You have a brand new quarterback. There are this isn't a completely stable situation that JSN is just, we've transitioned to the next year and everything around him is exactly the same. No, there's a lot of things that have changed here, and his draft price is going way up. Am I saying that?
He got a top 3 NFL draft pick at quarterback. I mean, that has to be an upgrade, right?
Talking about Sam Darnold?
Sam Darnold, baby.
I forgot he was done.
I
was like, what is this game you're playing, sir? So
He's probably still younger than Tyler Shuck.
Yes, we all are.
We are.
Yeah, we are all. If you're listening, you are younger than Tyler Shuck.
So last year, weeks 1 through 8 for JSN, 1 total touchdown despite averaging nearly 8 targets a game. Weeks 9 through 16 pulls in 5 touchdowns in that time on 9 targets per game. So it's like the touchdowns went way up. Just saying that I think there's room for some concern, and the same for Zay Flowers of will he take that step? Now he's going much later in the draft.
I feel like he's not being as – I don't think people are looking at him the same way they look at JSN right now. JSN fits the bill of how I would have felt – how we all felt about Terry McLaurin
right
after the second year, and you're like, okay, now it's time. Here's the crown. Become a wide receiver 1 for the next 10 years, and that's the thing that goes into question.
The combination of what he did at the end of last year with what he was supposed to be coming in, add in the DK Metcalf
departure,
trade and the Tyler Lockett trade, and you're expecting him to be a top 10 wide receiver this year. So, but I do hear you on the data, and there are a lot of negatives in his situation as well. The new quarterback, all the jokes about it being number 3, and Darnold was able to hold Justin Jefferson's value, but he's still Sam Darnold.
Right.
New offensive coordinator?
Yeah, yep. The possibility that Sam Darnold comes in and, lands on his face, and Jalen Milroe is playing at the end of the year, that is not unforeseeable.
Yeah, that one's interesting. More so, just like you got the 2 names for this year, but just moving forward, it's rational to me why people do it.
Oh, yeah, I've been doing like a bunch of my guy whiffs are because it's a guy who broke out in year 2.
Yeah,
and I'm so pumped for next year.
Yeah,
and then they don't meet they don't fall on their face.
I think
right.
I know.
They don't bring back.
Mooney. I think Mooney was.
Yeah, I think he was
my guy for me the year that happened.
I think I know why that is happening, and I'm curious because you've got the data, you've been doing the research. I think it is because the truly, really special players are now very often breaking out in year 1.
Oh, dude,
it is a rookie. You want to go in on rookies from last year who broke out in year 1. They're going to crush.
So, like I said, the hit rate. And I define that as in they finish at least 1 point fewer or better for the expectation. The hit rate on, like I said, the guys who break out in year 2, about 52%. If you break out in year 1, your hit rate on the next one, 94%.
Oh, that's got me hot and bothered.
Yes.
Yeah, you've already beaten the level.
Yeah.
You know, you've beaten the game.
Wow, that is crazy. Okay, well, that goes great into my...
And these things, like, they do, it does go all over the place. It's not just high-end wide receivers. It's, Jaden Reed finished as a top 24 guy as a rookie, but then his draft expectation, because he wasn't drafted very high, he actually beat it despite all the highs and lows of his season. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so my next thing to overreact, it has to deal with rookies as well. Every year is different, and I don't want us to overreact to the amazing rookie draft class we just had last year.
Try to stop me.
We saw. I will hopefully succeed. Actually, with you, I hope I do not. We play in a lot of leagues together. But we saw this in 2014. If you have been playing fantasy long enough, that wide receiver draft class was just unbelievable, and it was like 2 years in a row where everyone was just assuming, like, no man, you gotta go so hard at these rookies because they were they were the Odell Beckhams and the people who just won people's leagues. This last year's draft class was way better at some positions than this year's draft class. Last year's wide receivers, they were historically great.
Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Ladd McConkey.
All three of them top 10 in best PPR points per game in rookie seasons over the last decade, all in this last season.
So 3 of the 10 best seasons over the last decade were
this
2024 rookies.
Exactly.
And that's pretty hard to repeat.
Yeah, that's not going to repeat. And you combine that with the fact that, this year pre-NFL draft, like, we're all hyped on these rookies now. I really like, I've scouted a lot of them. I like Trey Harris. He goes pick 55 to a good landing spot. I liked his thing.
He wasn't going to look for that button.
I liked his talent.
It would be a disaster.
But, like, he is not as good as last year's draft. Like, these guys, this year's class, Tedorola McMillan and Travis Hunter, they are not like these players we were drafting last year at wide receiver. This is a running back draft class. And so, honestly, if don't overreact to last year's failure at running back either. This class is loaded. Look at last year's quarterbacks as well. You had both Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix as rookie season top 10 quarterbacks. 29 passing touchdowns for Bo Nix. That's the second most all-time for a rookie. And Jaden Daniels, you can make an argument right now, he is already the quarterback 1 in Dynasty. And so now who's coming in? You know what I mean? Like, who's going to come in and be that? Do you believe in
the challenge of it's the reality that faces NFL executives every year is that you can draft what is there. And so the illusion that all draft capital is equal, right? It's like, if you're a first-round draft pick, you're a first-round draft pick, so you should play like a first-round draft pick. But there's individuals behind them.
Yeah,
right?
Cam Ward and Jackson Dart and Tyler Shuck are not as good as Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix.
We've had Blaine Gabbert years and Christian Ponder years. We've had rookie wide receivers and running backs that go so high because that's just what is available to NFL teams, and they imbue a value. Look, I like Matthew Golden, but the metrics behind Matthew Golden being a first-round wide receiver, if you put him in last year's draft class, he doesn't touch the first round. There are so many players. I mean, you named 3 of them, but like the variables from year to year, it's almost like a clean slate philosophy where you need to look at the player and the talent and the reality of the situation in some cases as much as you do the draft capital. Draft capital tells you a lot about opportunity, but it doesn't tell you that they're going to execute on that opportunity. Their talent does.
Exactly right. And so, and the only other one I would throw out there, this is a talented tight end draft class. So for several years in a row, we've had now, a rookie tight end breakout. But Brock Bowers was a generational prospect. We were hearing about him when he was a rookie, 19-year-old coming in and dominating. He made Ladd McConkey literally never have a breakout age because he technically never broke out on that team because it was Brock Bowers' team. And so we got 2 really good-looking tight end rookies. And I do think that the NFL has changed, and I'm not so opposed to a rookie being very involved, getting more opportunity. But don't draft these guys thinking, I'm getting Brock Bowers. You're not. There's one Brock Bowers.
What is the draft capital on Colston Loveland right now?
So,
do we have any data yet?
Not
Okay.
really.
But
I looked that
real.
up, and it's not real because at least on the sleeper data that I'm looking at, he has not. He's buried, and I've still
Bowers
got him.
Bowers draft capital did not chase Laporta's success. People did discount Bowers. Like Bowers was like
he
a
was like
7th or 8th round pick. I mean, if you thought you were getting Laporta or anything close, you would have been. This would have been a 3rd or 4th round pick.
So this year for rookies, honestly, it's almost a pivot from last year. Go hard and deep at running backs in your drafts. Be a little bit more cautious. I still love drafting rookies, and I'm going to. You just can't imbue last year's talent and overreact and reach on guys that you shouldn't be.
It makes sense. I will still be excited at the potential of some of those rookies, but it's all about what you're paying.
It's all about the market, the supply demand, and just probability. Like factoring in all the if fantasy football is not a black and white binary choice thing. It is a probability-based sport or game, not a sport.
What's
going on here, Chuckles?
Well,
I don't know. I was just thinking maybe.
Did you want to do some mailbag?
Maybe we could do some mailbag. I don't know.
I mean, we have a couple minutes.
Let's talk about this for a second.
What are some of the benefits and negatives?
Some of the benefits of doing a mailbag segment right now.
Oh, my gosh.
Are that the show would go much longer. I think one of our Inducers Alley
is ready to close
I'm
down
not going to
the show.
say who it is. I won't call them out, but someone doesn't want this toilet trophy.
And we're just more of a one-cut show. We don't really take breaks.
Yeah, we don't take breaks. If a Deucer takes a break, they get a trophy, which I would love for them to get.
Mike's got a trophy.
So anyways, on that note, mailbag.
Oh, my gosh.
I think we'll let him off the hook.
Right.
That'll do it for today's episode. Boy, I would have loved to get in some mailbag, but we would have lost the producer. So next week, it's Dynasty Week.
Oh,
Do
baby.
not miss it.
Dino Week.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.